It's usually the kids that are worried about this. I'm wondering if as a parent we can figure out how to not be overprotective. At the end of this video, you're going to have some clear ideas about how to get out of that overprotective mode. So why are we overprotective in the first place? You know why? It's because this is a risky planet that we live on. You know better than your kids do. You know that there's risks out there, don't you? Right next to my office is a busy street. And on the other side of that busy street is a place that I love to go for lunch. There are some risks in crossing a busy street, aren't there? Let's talk about 3 things that we can do with the risk, and then we'll tie it into what it means for you as a parent. Go back to the street example. I'm standing on this side of the street. I want to be on that side of the street to get my lunch. But there's all these busy cars going back and forth. Here's my first option. I can ignore the risk. I can ignore the risk. So what I'm going to do is just tie on a little blindfold so that I can't see a thing, and then I'm going to just step out into the street and hope for the best. Yeah, how's that going to go? Dr. Paul's going to get flattened on the street. Ignoring risk increases danger. Are we clear about this? So from a parenting standpoint, what does it mean to ignore the risk? It means that we don't monitor our children's activities. Can you see how well this would go for teenagers? We just hope for the best. Let them go out there into the world, and you know that there are risks out there. Ignoring risk increases the danger. So not maybe the best option. Let's go to option number 2. Here I stand on this side of the street. I want to be on that side of the street. Busy cars going back and forth. I can avoid the risk. That's option number 2. I'm going to avoid the risk. And that means I'm going to sit down on this side of the street. Not going to go. It's way too dangerous. I'm not taking that risk. Okay, how's that going to work out for me? I'm not going to get lunch, am I? Is it safer? Yeah, it's arguably safer. I suppose a car could come out of its lane and hit me on the side of the road. But it's arguably safer, isn't it? The downside, which is a big downside if you're hungry, is that you don't get lunch. What does that have to do with parenting? Sometimes as parents, we want to avoid the risk. And we become overprotective. Right? We have our kids just sit down on this side of the street. You just don't go anywhere. It's too dangerous. And I know families who take this to the extreme. Can you imagine, for example, now I'm making this one up, but can you imagine getting your kids all hunkered down in a fallout shelter? All right? This is a concrete reinforced cage where they're going to stay. And you don't have any media, no TV, no smartphones, no games, nothing. And you bring their meals in, and all of those meals have been specially prepared by chefs who sanitize everything. I mean, can you imagine something that extreme? What's wrong with raising kids in that kind of an environment? They don't get to experience life if they're living in a fallout shelter. Now that's an extreme. But when we're overprotective as parents, that's what we're doing. We're getting them all sheltered in there. Now, does it eliminate the risk? No, it doesn't. Because it could still something could happen to them, right? I remember a line from Finding Nemo. Do you remember that animated show that came out years ago, Disney Pixar? It was a great little show about a lost fish. And anyway, the father fish was explaining to Dory, the little blue Tang character played by Ellen DeGeneres, that he just wanted to make sure that nothing ever happened to his son. And Dory responds in her typical funny manner, well, if nothing ever happened to him, then nothing would ever happen to him. There's some big downsides to that, huh? That's why we got to get out of overprotective mode. But it doesn't seem like a good alternative to go back to alternative number one, which is to ignore the risk and just hope for the best. So I'm going to give you a third option, okay? I got your back. We're here on this side of the street. We want to be on that side of the street. Busy cars going back and forth. What are we going to do? Here's our third option. Manage the risk. Manage the risk. What we're going to do is take a little walk, about a half a block that way. And we're going to come to a crosswalk with a signal. We're going to push the button on the signal. We're going to wait until the little flashy indicator indicates that it's time to walk. And then we're going to look both directions. Even though we got the light, we're going to look both directions, and then we will carefully step into the street. Now, in a crosswalk, you are perfectly 100% safe. Do you hear your alarms going off? No, you're not. You could still get clobbered in the crosswalk. Managing risk does not eliminate risk. What it does is it brings it down to a level that is acceptable so that we can actually take action and achieve what it is that we desire. I get to have my lunch, and I get to have it in the safest way that I can possibly come up with. Managing risk is what we need to do with our kids. There are real dangers out there. We want to make sure we teach them the proper principles that will allow them to safely navigate a risky world. We want to make sure that we give them all the tools that they need to do that. We want to be available to them as a trusted, loving resource. We want to set appropriate limits, which means that we're going to allow them to experience the world within certain parameters that we set as parents. We've got a lot of other videos here on the Positive Parenting playlist that will give you some specific ideas about how to set those limits and boundaries. How do we become less overprotective so that our kids get to experience life but do it in the safest way possible? Remember, we got three options. We can ignore the risk. That increases the danger. We can avoid the risk. Well, that takes away all the potential payoffs. Or we can manage the risk, where we take intentional steps to provide the tools and resources necessary for them to handle it. They can handle it with our support and help. One final thought before we wrap up this video. What's your job as a parent? It's to love them, no matter what, and even if. Notice, your job is not to make sure that certain things never happen to them or certain things always happen for them. You don't have that kind of power. So get off of that delusion and come back to your job. Your job is to love them no matter what and even if. Can you do that? Remembering your job will help you to be less overprotective, because then it's not your job to make sure that nothing ever happens to them. Like Dory said, then nothing would ever happen to them, and that kind of sucks. So let's get back on our job. Love them no matter what, and even if. Congratulations on being such a conscious parent. Love to have you as part of this community, whether you're here on LinkedIn or YouTube. Great community of conscious parents. If you haven't checked out the Parenting Power Up, go to parentingpowerup.com and check it out. There's a free sample for you there to listen to. It's an audio course that Vicki and I put together with you in mind. I hope you find it useful.
And I wished I had a number so